Okay. So yeah, as always, we're recording and we'll be posting this online afterwards. Um, from an admin perspective, first order of business, can anyone scribe today?
I will take notes to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Highly appreciate it. Otherwise, Ilya couldn't make it today because he's on an offsite. And for Todd, I don't know how many of you heard from him at TPAC, but he's leaving the chair position in the group. And we basically decided that we'll continue on with 2 chairs up until the rechartering that happens in May next year. But we'll be actively looking for candidates up until that point. So yeah, we'll send out a call for candidates at some point in the near future. So just as an FYI. And otherwise, regarding moving the calls an hour earlier, I'm getting like there's some survivorship bias asking the group this because you're all here. But I didn't hear any objections. So like I think we will be moving the calls to be at this time rather than 10 a.m. Pacific rather than 11 going forward to accommodate Ryosuke. Unless and if there are problems with that in the future, we can try to figure out a different time that works well for everyone or most people. Okay, and with that, we can move on to talk about navigation timing. So first order of business. Eric, are you scribing in the I linked in? Okay, yeah, you put in the participants. So okay, cool. Navigation timing and BF cache, issue 115. Nicholas, do you want to talk about this some more? I think you're the closest to the issue.
Well, I haven't read the full issue. Sorry.
Okay, so I can maybe yeah, I can. Okay, so I can talk about that. We've talked about the back-forward navigation type and what it should do a bit at TPAC, and then had a bunch of feedback from Boris regarding the current definition and how we should improve it. But I think we had an underlying question at TPAC that we didn't really know to answer, which is what do we want so back-forward navigations to look like, and then history navigations to look like. And we had a use case from Nick Jansma related to telling apart history navigations from regular navigations. But that doesn't necessarily tell us what we need to do for BF cache, where the document is being revived from the BF cache and it has the previous entries in place.
Right, but I guess my first question is, what does the spec currently say? Because the issues about the spec, the spec being incorrectly worded or something.
Yes. So currently, let's see.
Oh, right. It says if the navigation
Traverse the history, where every navigation goes through traverse the history. That's the.
Right. So, do you know what was the intended meaning of that statement? Or should we just ignore that and decide something different?
So of course, so first of all, I wasn't around when this was defined, so I'm not sure. My understanding is that it's intended for history related pages and getting a sense of their loading times, but also because the navigation type is back forward and history doesn't have to be, so yeah, back forward, but not necessarily BF cache related. So yeah, it's history related navigation. So it's reasonable to expect it to have different characteristics from navigate operation or a reload operation. I think it also makes sense to distinguish back forward cache from just regular history traversal, in a sense.
Right. But for the back forward case, which would be the timestamps that we would use? Because some of them don't make sense when there's no navigation, right?
Yes. So I guess maybe the shortest path forward for this would be to define, like, I guess the question is, do we want to define a back forward cache navigation type as part of L2? Or should we just redefine the current, what basically take what Boris is suggesting and use traverse history by delta, or to define back forward as a simple history navigation, and then tackle BF cache at a later point? Or do we? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I can add another additional bit of context. So some people, like internally here at Google, are requesting information about wanting to measure, now that Chrome is implementing back forward cache, wanting to measure how long it takes from when the user clicks back, does it take for the page to show? Currently, that information is not exposed anywhere, with the exception of in Safari, where Safari will update the performance.timing navigation timing L1 data. And that was useful for them to get that information, and no other browser has that information. And so one question that they had was, could we spec something that allows us to know like how long it takes to come out of the BF cache? And then we could compare the difference between that and how long a regular back-forward history navigation takes. So there's an additional use case that's not currently being met by the API. And so I think there's a question of like, is what's currently spec'd what we want? And then also, can we either update that or add a new entry type to get this new information?
Well, that sounds like it's arguing for adding a new navigation type, which is back forward navigation, and then you could pull that time out just like you could any other type of navigation. Is that true?
There's already the back forward type. I think this one is specifically about back forward cache.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Add a back forward cache type,
Yeah.
Right.
which is what I thought. Which is what I thought you have.
That one would be different from the back forward.
Right.
Because it's already back forward.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and I thought wasn't that what you have? I thought you had just suggested that as a possible way forward.
So
I think
that-
you were suggesting
yeah,
an additional entry type that gets emitted after the page has already loaded, and all the existing, like the navigation entry will still be there, and then an additional, like a navigation cache entry or something, would get redispatched by Performance Observer.
yeah, that's what I think we like. Yes, I think that would be the cleanest solution. But as Nicholas pointed out, there are various currently exposed attributes of that entry that won't necessarily make sense. So we need to think through what each one of them would mean in the BF cache case. And then there's the slightly tangent issue of the fact that there are currently compatibility, like currently it's underdefined what browsers should do. So Safari is doing one thing, Firefox is doing another, and it would probably, like for L1, it would make sense to decide on a single behavior and stick, like, align everyone to that.
So one additional point I wanted to make, I have pretty strong reservations about changing anything currently on the page that's like in a getter on a global, because I've seen this happen in my own code, and I'm assuming it would happen to other people as well, where you store a local reference to that value and you don't expect it to change when the page comes out of the BF cache. And then there could be lots of issues where you're using a local reference along with a new reference, and then your math doesn't add up. And I just think it could be very surprising to a lot of developers.
So if I hear you correctly, I hear you arguing that the L1 entry values should not change.
I think so, yeah. Or the performance.timing navigation start should not change as well. Or the performance.time entry should not change.
The L1,
That's the L1.
Yeah. And I tend to agree with you that it seems surprising to modify those specific entries, but like leave all rest of the state untouched. Seems weird. Okay, so to figure out so as a path forward, I think that we'll need to make progress on this issue and better define what the current back forward type means. And then maybe Philip or Nicholas, maybe you can open a new issue indicating that we want tackle the back forward cache case specifically. And from my perspective, the only piece that we will need to agree on for L2 for that case would be whether or not we want to change the L1, change the already dispatched entries. And I tend to agree with Philip that the answer to that is no, but I don't know. Ryosuke, do you have any opinions on that in terms of why is current Safari behavior rewriting those entries rather than leaving them as is?
I wouldn't know if that's actually intentional or just simply a bug. So off the top of my head, so, yeah, I don't have anything like useful to say here.
Okay, but maybe can you take an action item to investigate that and get back to the group to, just say if this is intentional or not?
Could somebody elaborate on what exactly the behavior Safari has the other browsers don't have again?
I can. So performance.timing navigation start, and I think some other properties of the performance timing object from the L1 specification, not from the not a performance entry. Those values get updated when the page comes out of BF cache, and the values that don't apply, like I don't know, redirect or worker start, I think just get set to 0. I also was testing this, and in the page show event, the event.timestamp property is set to something, but it's not set to the same thing as navigation start. And I think that would be another interesting thing to find out how browsers would set that value when the page is coming out of the BF cache. But that's not super relevant to this particular thing you were asking. The main thing you could look at is that performance.timing.navigation start is updated when the page comes out of BF cache.
When you say updated, you're saying that so you're in a page A, you go to the page B, and back navigate to page A. And you're saying in Safari, the navigation timing is updating the page on the other browser. It is not.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can take a look.
Cool. So as far as action items, yeah, Ryosuke is taking a look at that. And Philip, can you open an issue for a new BF cache navigation type?
Sure.
Okay.
So it wouldn't just be a navigation type, right? We would dispatch a new entry.
Yes, we will dispatch a new entry with that new navigation type with potentially different, and we'll need to define what the values for that entry would be in the BF cache case.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and okay. Cool. And yeah, and as far as this, yeah, and as far as 115 goes, it seems like it's mostly just we need to do some work to properly define what the non-BF cache says, like what the non-BF cache case does here. And
Can I get back about this particular issue? Because so it looks like this Safari's behavior might be because of the change made in 2010, even before Blink fork happened. So I guess either Blink manually changes its behavior back to do something else, or something interesting happening there.
So
Well,
Chrome
we don't
doesn't
have
yet have BF cache.
Hmm?
Chromium doesn't have a BF cache, or there's work in progress now to ship one, but there is no shipped BF cache.
I see. So I guess I can point to I guess change, should I comment on a GitHub issue directly?
Yeah, if you could comment on the GitHub issue with a pointer to that change, and we can do some, archaeology that way.
In fact, yeah. So this was actually made by Mihai in 2010. Okay.
As far as I know, with Link's implementation of BF cache, it will not reset the entry, but I'm not entirely sure about that.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So shall we move on to the next item? Because I think this is, yeah, for 115, it's just work that I need to do. But yeah, clarifying that this is not BF cache related was extremely helpful. Okay, so shall we move on to 114?
Sure.
Which is again seems yeah, it seems related, and yeah, this is again not necessarily something we need to discuss. This is yeah, we need to add some hooks to HTML that will enable to store that state in relevant documents and then read it from a getter. So this is just work that that is L2 blocking. Okay. Looking at 116, Nicholas, you filed it, so.
Oh. 1 second.
The definition of reload issue.
Right. Yeah, so the navigation type reload is a bit unclear to me from the spec. So in the example there, we load a website, then click on the URL address bar and then press enter. So for Chrome browser, it is treated as a reload. And so the navigation type is set to reload, but some people filed a bug saying that this should not be treated as a reload because it was not triggered by a reload operation, because it was triggered by hitting the enter in the URL bar. So I want clarification about what is the actual correct behavior here.
Yeah, and I think it boils, like, let me just look at the spec, but is reload operation something that is well defined? Because I don't, yeah.
No.
Location.reload, sure, but then reload operation is not necessarily something that.
Yeah, there's no link to it.
There's no link, and I don't really see find anywhere. So I think we need to have a better definition of what a reload operation is. Do you know, like, what do you mean by treat it as a reload in Chrome in terms of the like cache control headers on the request or something different? What are the implications of that treated as reload? And is that something that's web compatible?
I think it is treated exactly the same as control-R, because Blink receives a navigation, which the internal type is also reload, which is the same as the type when you control-R, but I'm not entirely sure. So I think
Are there, like, beyond navigation timing, are there other implications to that treated as reload?
I think there would be an example of, for instance, same-site cookies.
So looking at HTML, there is a reload triggered navigation concept, which maybe we can use for this purposes. And it's defined in reload operations and then in navigating across documents. But it's not really.
That was the reload triggered navigation concept you said?
Yes, it's
Got it.
not.
Thank you.
Are you familiar with that? Well, or?
No. I wanted to make sure I heard what you said so I could look it up later. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see it being set or defined as to what it. So it's defined for the explicit reload method. Yes, when a user requests that the active document be reloaded through a user interface element, a user agent should navigate and set the, and then this is a reload triggered navigation. But there is no explicit definition of what the user interface element is. And I don't think that this would be there are no web, whether the user hit enter at on the address bar or click the reload button or press the command R or the equivalent like F5 or whatever. That is not something that's currently web exposed and necessarily compatible. I would guess that different browsers can do different things and it won't matter for content.
Right, I agree with that, but then navigation type navigate includes entering the URL in the user agent's address bar. So this is why it's a little contradictory.
Navigation started by clicking on a link or entering the URL in the user agent's address bar. So, but in this case, the user didn't enter the URL. The URL is already there, and they click enter on it. So it
doesn't.
I think this.
Does that mean if you copy paste the URL, then it shouldn't be navigate because,
I think that this is what Chrome currently is doing, and I don't know if that, it sounds like a UI decision that shouldn't necessarily make its way through, it shouldn't be in the spec. So the spec should probably instead of not linking to anything when it comes to reload operation, we should, link to the concept of a reload triggered navigation somehow and define reload through that, but that won't solve your issue.
Well, it may, if I can somehow figure out what entering on the address bar in Chrome is, which I suspect is a reload triggered navigation. But the other thing,
it is as well, but then it's not defined. Yeah, and like a user interface element is something that sounds like, to be explicitly vague.
right, precisely why we need to redefine navigate as well, because it is using those user interface elements, which don't necessarily.
I think we can define it as, I think we can just define it as a navigation operation that wasn't a reload triggered, and nor
by none of
the history traversal. Basically,
none of the others.
Yeah, none of the others. Yeah.
Right, because there's reload, back, forward, and pre-render.
Yeah. Pre-render is also like, we need to kill it because it doesn't, like, it's not implemented anywhere, and we decided we'll remove it. So I think this is another issue, to just like remove pre-render. Okay.
I just want to be, hold on, I just want to be clear for a second, if you don't mind. The definition of a reload triggered navigation is in the otherwise of the definition of what the reload method does when it's invoked in the location interface of the history.
Yeah, so
Okay.
There's the location interface, and then below that, you have just a paragraph below it. When a user requests that the active document of a browsing context be reloaded through a user interface element, the user agent should blah, 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 blah. This is a reload triggered navigation.
I see. I got it. Got it. Thank you.
And I believe this just covers everything else, like the non-location.reload case.
Got it.
Yeah.
So can somebody post the URL to that part of the spec?
Yes, I will do that now.
I got it right here, Eli.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. I knew you were going to talk. I didn't mean to.
I was just going to say that, yeah, I mean, I think there are implications of this that are broader, and some of them are super weird, in terms of things like hitting enter in the address bar does something different than hitting reload if you got to the page via post. And hitting enter in the address bar versus hitting refresh does something different for same-site cookies, like in terms of whether or not the same-site cookies get sent. And so I think this is a broader issue in the web platform than just the implications on navigation timings.
Which
Are you
is
are you talking about Chrome? Like, are you saying all
In
browsers
Chrome.
do this?
In Chrome. So in Chrome, if you go to the address bar and hit enter on a page that you got to via post, you don't get the repost confirmation dialog. You just get a get of that page. Versus if you hit the reload button, you get a post confirmation, and then it reloads the page via post. Similarly, if you go to a page in a cross-origin navigation and same-site cookies are suppressed due to that navigation, if you hit enter, the same-site cookies will appear in the page, But if you hit reload, the same site cookies do not appear on the page.
Do you know if these concepts are somehow bound, like if this different behaviors map to like spec concept that define this like a post get?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, so is this the difference between the reload from the script versus the reload from like address bar? Or you're saying that reload
This was the idea that there are interface. There are multiple mechanisms in Chrome that trigger something like a reload, and it sounds like this conversation originated out of the fact that hitting enter in the address bar for navigation entries is the same as hitting the refresh button. And my point was merely that that may be true for navigation entries, but it doesn't appear to be true for at least two other behaviors of Chrome.
Yeah, and then maybe there should be multiple types of reload triggered navigations where some of them behave differently, like for posts or for gets or.
But hold on. Like, are those differences in like Chromium intentional?
I believe that like it seems like a UI decision, but I can't.
But like, what?
I can't answer that. Like I don't.
Why? Well, I mean, so in the case of get changing, like sorry, posts get changing to get, there's no problem here, right? Like in that case, it's not really reload; it's really navigate at that point.
Yes, I don't.
Yep.
I'm not sure.
I guess that's another thing that we don't really define here, right? Like we don't even say like what kind of navigation methodology was used per se in the navigate. So like since we don't really define what the reload operation is.
Yeah, I think this raises a bunch of questions that at least I don't have answers to. So
I agree. I mean, maybe what we need is we need a broader issue, not just like hitting enter, but like really precisely defining what the reload mean.
So I think it would be like, I think it makes sense for reload. Like I don't know that we need to address that in navigation timing. I think that it's fairly safe to just map the navigation timing reload concept to the current HTML reload triggered navigation concept.
Yeah, but we don't know what that means, though.
What?
We're just assuming that that's what we want, but we don't really understand it.
It's not really defined in terms of, yeah, it's not really defined in terms of behavior. And then I think we need a broader issue of figuring out if the different behaviors that are triggered from different UI elements when it comes to reload that Eric mentioned, so post versus get, and then same site cookies versus like whether they're sent or not, whether this is considered the same site navigation or not. I think we need, like, we probably need a broader issue to figure out if they map to a well-defined standard concept and or not. And then we'll need to, like, if it is, maybe we want to also tie ourselves into those concepts, but I don't know right now that it is.
Do you know which spec would make sense to file that broader issue in, or no?
It sounds like HTML because it currently has the reload trigger navigation thing. So maybe there need to be multiple types of that. But yeah, and it does different things based on that, like it's basically a flag that, yeah, it sets a reload navigation flag that does various things as far as fetch is concerned. And maybe there need to be multiple flags that do, you know, that do this post to get conversion or the same site.
It's also just possible that some of these are attempts at optimization, and they're not meant to be defined, so it's not clear.
Yeah, and it also doesn't look like fetch is doing anything with the flag other than returning a boolean saying is reload navigation. So, but basically what I'm saying is this seems like a broader issue that we don't, like, it doesn't necessarily a navigation timing issue. Maybe it's an HTML issue, and we need to see if what Chrome is doing has a matching spec concept, and if other browsers are doing something similar in response to different UI elements, and whether, you know, what's the rationale behind it. And these are all questions that I don't currently have answers to. So it's probably worthwhile to just write them down in an issue and see what the people who do have answers to that say.
I would actually still leave one comment, which is that I think if you are currently in a post page and if you are to navigate to the get version of the page, I think that's already navigating, right? You're navigating the same URL, but that's not really a reload.
Not
right?
a reload. Sure, and I don't know if this is a scenario like.
Let me. The reason I said is the following. Consider the following case, right? Like if you are in a get page and then you went to the post version of the page with the payload, that's clear in navigate, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think that if we just map the reload definition, yeah, and I agree. And if I read the current definition correctly, then we can, like, we can verify whether Chrome and other browsers consider this reload navigation or not, and make sure that this maps correctly to the, you know, to the HTML spec concept, like the is reload navigation concept, but it's like reload triggered navigation concept, but and maybe it is already like the like for the same site versus non-same site, maybe it's a similar distinction where no, but it is reload, so it doesn't really qualify for that. Yeah, it's worthwhile to test and see, you know, what the rationale behind, like, so test as well as just, you know, ask folks what is the rationale behind those different behavior for different UI elements, and whether this is something that should be, you know, a spec concept or not.
Sure. So what are the action items?
So I think the action items are, one, to map the current reload flag, as well as the navigate, like the reload type and the navigate type. We need to map them to the navigation, like reload triggered navigation concept, and then make sure that navigate is none of the above kind of concept.
In particular, not
and
UI elements.
and we don't like it doesn't strictly define UI elements, and it doesn't it doesn't necessarily answer your question. And
Right.
and then your question is, I think, I think that from a loading perspective, the differences between a reload and a navigate is potentially with some, cache control headers on the requests that can result in different loading characteristics. So if, as far as Chrome is concerned, it is a reload and it does trigger those different loading characteristics, then we probably want to report that as a reload regardless of the UI element through which this reload was triggered. And then there's the higher level issue of different UI elements do different reload like things, and maybe we want to define that, but that will require some more research, and it also seems like a bug on HTML and not like out of scope for navigation timing.
By the way, we have 10 minutes left, so maybe we should move on to the next issue.
Yeah. Okay. So does that make sense for everyone? Can we move to the next one?
Yep.
Okay. And the next one for navigation timing is 117. Basically, we modified the previous timing allow checks that didn't really make sense. We changed them to be same origin checks. So there are various not entry types, but various attributes on the entry that only get a value if the current navigation is the same origin as the previous navigation. But right now that definition is not like, it requires some cleanups because there are
right, but so just to clarify, what is the correct behavior? Is it to do same origin / timing allow origin checks for these, or to not do them?
So timing allow origin doesn't make so first of all, it's not clear how, like from a spec perspective, currently the origin of the previous page is not something that's piped to the next page. And it's not clear, basically the way that it was defined was that the page that is linking to the current navigation has control over various no, that's not how it was defined. That's how it should have been defined. But basically, if you are browsing to a page, it has control over whether it has access to various characteristics of the previous navigation, and that was the part that was tau protected. And
so
then
these should not. These are tau protected.
So it didn't make sense for the current page to be able to opt in to get information on the previous page. So we removed that and make sure that this is the same origin check. But from what I hear you say here on the issue, there are a bunch of attributes which are still protected and shouldn't be.
So it's just a bit confusing because in the navigation timing processing model, they are not protected. But if you click on the link to them, they link to the resource timing spec.
Hmm.
And their attribute getters do the checks. So, like, imagine if I'm an implementer, do I do the checks or right? Because
yeah. So this is a spec bug. There shouldn't be checks, and yeah. And what you're saying is, like, if I look at the main lookup start and so, oh, okay. So if I click on the link, that takes me to resource timing, which does have the checks.
right.
So we need to redefine all those.
So I think what we need to do is the attribute getters should be trivial, and then in resource timing we need to move the algorithmic parts outside of the attribute getters and move them somewhere when they are set, so that that part of the code only runs for the resource timing processing model, but not the navigation timing.
Yeah, and alternatively, we don't link to resource timing from here, but redefine everything, which is uglier. But yeah, so your way is probably better. Okay, so the issue is clear. And yeah.
So sounds like we have to file the issue on resource timing and have that issue block this issue, right?
Yes, that makes sense. Unless we want to go the let's rewrite, like let's redefine everything, which I don't think we do. So yeah.
I don't think we want to redefine everything.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense to file an issue on resource timing to modify the processing model to like basically have a flag, and then we link to that with that flag, and you know, where in that flag we have a trivial getter rather than a tau check getter. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I can probably do that.
And also secure connection start is also just linking directly to resource timing, which seems incorrect for the same reason.
Secure connection start is linking to what you said?
To the resource timing definition directly. It's just in the processing model, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just says set the secure connection start attribute as defined in the attributes processing model in resource timing.
Yeah.
So again, first of all, that's not correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I think this probably has a like, if I remember correctly, is there a separate issue open on that, or because I remember an issue that's talked about that specifically, but maybe I'm hallucinating.
yeah, I think there was a secure connection start issue.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because we tried to consolidate, like they had very different definitions, and then we tried to consolidate that, but yeah, looks like we consolidated too much. So yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And otherwise, in the 2 minutes that we have left, there are a couple of request idle callback issues. Ryosuke, yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm super excited to see you making progress on those. Anything in particular that we should discuss there, or I think one of them.
I don't think we can discuss in 2 minutes. I think we need to carry it over to the next triage meeting.
Okay. So
also, do you want to invite Roy to the next call?
Yeah, Ross.
That has context there, Ross.
Yeah. I
Otherwise,
can,
no one will be able to provide answers, I think.
yeah, but I can do that, and then we'll talk about that in the next call. Okay. Okay, cool. So thank you all.
When's the next call though?
So currently it's planned for Thursday, 2 weeks from now, on the 31st. 7 so 11 10 a.m. PST.
Although, I mean, if Yosuke is blocked on that, then maybe he can schedule a out of band call with the relevant people there. I don't know if he was planning to work on this in the immediate future or.
True. Ryusuke, if I'm happy to schedule a call with us. Okay. But
I'm not necessarily blocked by that in the sense that I would just implement whatever I think is the most appropriate because no browser match, right? So in that sense, it's not blocking, but it would be good if
if we schedule that. So I'll try to schedule something for next week. I'll ping you over email.
Okay.
And we'll find.
So next meeting is at 10 a.m. on 31st, right?
Yes, next meeting is 10 a.m.
I think that's Halloween.
Oh.
Should we?
So we shouldn't. Yeah, I will.
So are we going to dress up as a browser that conforms to all the specs? Because it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Unicorn browser, yeah, like that.
The unicorn browser, that's right. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
100% compatibility.
Right.
So
it would be.
I'll send an email to see if we can move the meeting to earlier that week because Halloween probably won't work well for folks. But good point on that. Thank you. Okay, cool. Thanks all, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks, more or less.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.